Well, for those of you who might be curious about what it takes to live in ocean view, off the grid, and fairly independent from the utility companies that you're used to, let me give you a little bit of insight. This is the heart of a solar electrical system. It consists of an inverter and a junction box that connects the solar panels to the batteries and to the inverter, a charge controller that controls how much power can flow into the batteries from the solar panel or from the generator, and an AC breaker box that controls the output circles to the various buildings and circuits in my house. So this is where the power goes through and is regulated. But in addition to these items, you need to have solar panels or a windmill, which I'll take you presently up to the roof and show you some solar panels. And also you need a set of batteries. Now the batteries are the main heart of the system that requires maintenance. Basically once a month you have to open them up and see how much water is left in them to, well, it's not just water, it's an electrolyte really, combination of sulfuric acid and water. But you need to check that and make sure it has enough in there, because if you make the mistake of not checking it and the water level falls down too far, the plates of the batteries will be exposed and the batteries will surely be ruined after not very long. So that is a maintenance item, but other than that, this system requires very little uptake, and so most people can do it once it's installed. The actual installation is quite technical, and you're probably best left to a professional to do it, but it can be done with enough research. Alright, so yeah, this is what gives me lights. I use direct current lights inside the houses, and then I have the inverter to provide alternating current for any appliances or you know, the typical plug in the wall kind of stuff. The running the lights on the DC directly allows me to have relative silence most of the time, since the inverter is not required to provide that. The inverter itself makes a slight hum, which is not obnoxious, but it is noticeable. If I turn on a light, you can hear that small hum. So it's just a reminder that the thing's working and it is drawing power while it's turned on, as well as producing alternating current for your system. And when nothing's working, it goes into a standby mode, which is relatively benign. So there we have it. Let's go take a look at solar panels. Okay, there you can see a very small solar array of 3 panels, each of which generates 110 watts. And it's enough for my simple system. If you're used to drawing a lot of power and running TVs and appliances all day long, you're going to need at least 3 of the newer grade panels, which produce closer to 220 or 240 watts each per hour, or continuously. Anyhow, the other thing you'll note here is that there's skylights. And skylights are really great up here in Ocean View because they not only provide light so you don't have to run the lights in order to see, but they also warm up the space inside and provide a lot of heat, which if your cabin is insulated, that heat will last well into the night. Okay, so here we have the battery box. I've located this up above a window to be out of the way. I can't really recommend this. If you have a place down lower, it would be far more convenient to check the water levels, but this is one way of going about it. There's six 6-volt batteries there. they're paired in order to produce 12 volts from each pair. And so the overall system does produce 12 volts. And it's capable of storing about 600 amp hours. The large cables on top used to connect the batteries and also to connect the battery pack to the inverter are really essential. Don't ever try to go small on those battery connections. Whenever the inverter draws power, it needs it instantly and in large quantities. So if you want your wires not to melt, those large wires are essential. So one of the other things that's really essential out here in Ocean View is to have a water tank. This water tank is for two things. It's to store water that you have trucked in, and it's also to collect water off the roof of your structure. Now you can have two separate tanks, one for irrigation water and one for a lot cleaner water that you haul in. This tank here is primarily an irrigation tank, and you can see the pipe running into it that comes off of my roof. I also have a small cubie here, and you can see the barrels that I haul in the truck in order to fill it when necessary. This cubie is connected to a pump box, as is the main tank. And this pump box is a really ingenious little setup. I have a solar panel on top of it to use to drive the 12-volt pump. Now inside here you can see two 6-volt batteries to make 12 volts in series, and then there's two 12-volt pumps. One is to run the irrigation system and the other is for the house. These are both being run off the same set of batteries, and those batteries are continuously being charged by the solar panel during the day. They hold enough power to run any time, day or night. You can note that they are there's a small filter running into that first pump, and then there's a large white filter from the other pump to keep some of the algae from the tank getting into the system. Now under that garbage can over there is a pressure tank. That pressure tank is for the house system, so that the 12-volt pump doesn't have to come off and on all the time when you draw a glass of water out of the faucet. Pressure tank maintains pressure for about 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons before the pump will kick in. Really saves a lot on the pump running and wearing out. Now in this rugged lava landscape, it's rather inconvenient to have very large tractor-driven gardens. It's much more convenient to make small patches and then water them with the drip lines that are run off of the 12-volt pumps. Now that allows the water to be dispersed very regularly and directly into the ground rather than being evaporated into the air. So in this particular setup, I've got about 4 or 5 small gardens that I can rotate in order to have continual production of greens and the other food crops that I want to grow. Here you can see another garden that's fully mature. There's carrots and some very bug-eaten kale in the foreground. And this garden was placed right in a little lava flow channel. So it was already basically U-shaped and then just had to be filled in with dirt. Saves a lot of digging. In this garden we have dwarf California olives that are currently flowering. It's about 5 years old now. I'm hoping they'll produce something this year. Besides that, Got some leeks that grow very well up here. Now this garden has some spinach that's pretty much done, and some chard as well. Got roses that grow up here really well because there's no rose beetles. Some asparagus and some onions in the background. There's yeah, there you can see the roses sending up their shoots. And another aspect of these crates in the background, these pallets. Now these pallets are there for a very deliberate reason, which is to block the wind. Wind comes from that direction, and especially with very few trees to block it on this hillside, it can just knock the garden over in no time. So those pallets, even though they're fairly ugly, do a great service in protecting these plants from the wind.